Just so sometimes it's live streamed on YouTube at the time. So if you can't get on Zoom or for whatever reason, hopefully you can. But if you want to, you can actually see it on YouTube at the same time. Just so sometimes it's live streamed. Yeah, but that's weird. Okay. All right. Welcome, Jason Murphy, Wednesday night, Rebel Dharma. Glad you guys are here. Is there anyone new to the group that would like to introduce themselves, maybe online or in the room? Just kind of say your name and yeah, what brings you here?
Hi, I'm Zach. I just moved down the street and I've been checking this out. I've only been to the Friday, Thursday, and Monday.
So some of the morning stuff.
Not evening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I work in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to check this out.
Great.
And it's within walking distance, and I'm really enjoying it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks for introducing yourself.
I'm Sarah, and I'm involved in a 12-step program, anything that's involved in meditation, Buddhism.
Wonderful. Great. Welcome. Anyone else? Online? All right. Well, all are welcome. And we meet weekly here, and then there's other groups that happen, like was discussed. There's other groups that happen here in this center, and you can find out about it. I also have a couple day longs scheduled. The next day long is Relational Dharma, and it's going to be May 1st, and we will do um, a partial kind of online uh, and partial in person. So what I'm meaning about that is that if you can't make it here, then you can be online and be in the Zoom class, and then towards the end of the day, we will just be doing stuff, like an interrelational stuff happening, like a group process here in the room, and those people online. It's just too tricky to kind of try to navigate both. This allows for a little bit easier to navigate. But yeah, all right. Let's see. What was I thinking about? I was trying to think of some. There was a couple topics that kind of came up in my mind, and I thought about covering today. I don't know that I'll have time to go really into unpacking. It's been a while since I've done like a kind of a formalized talk. I've kind of been over the last several weeks. I've been just kind of uh, freestyling, going with questions, and I'm happy to always do that. And then there's a bit of a topic, and then sometimes I get inspired by a particular teaching or a practice, and will then take some time and unpack a particular aspect of Buddhist thought, Buddhist philosophy, practice. So, but we always start off with some meditation, or almost always. So let's start there today. So finding a place or a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, one where you can feel relaxed and alert, useful. There's no real right or wrong way to sit. Again, just utilizing that idea of relaxed to kind of relax the spine. You don't have to feel like you have to be rigid, but also alert. So allowing yourself to kind of sit upright. And it's okay to stand. It's okay to lay down. Primarily if you're not feeling sleepy. If you're feeling sleepy, probably not the best idea. I mean, unless you want to nap instead of meditate, which you're welcome to do. If you snore, we'll just kind of give you a nudge. So anyway, settling in. Arriving here. Maybe you've had a busy day. Maybe there's been a lot of kind of hecticness or busyness in your day. Maybe not. Maybe it's been an easeful day, relaxed, just recognizing whatever is kind of currently in the mind or whatever's left over from the day. A bit of a mindful check-in. Hearing the bell. In some way, just opening up to the changing, the changingness of the breath, of sound, of our bodies. Bringing awareness perhaps to the experience of breathing. Seeing if you can, observe or witness the breath as the body breathes itself. Each breath is born, lives for a time, and passes away. Each sound, each thought, each sensation, constantly changing. So allowing that to be the focus, the ever-changing nature of things. Helpful to perhaps choose one point to observe, to experience, whether it be the breath or sound or sensations. Relaxing into the present time experience, observing the arising and passing away. Of course, the attention may wander off, be pulled to the past or the future, the history or the mystery. It's not a problem. It's just a habit of the mind. This is mind training. So when we recognize that the attention has wandered off, just acknowledging where it's gone, and with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back, relaxing into the breath, observing the arising and passing away of thoughts, feelings, sounds, sensations, breath. To allow. Relax, observe, allow each moment. Breathing in. Know that you're breathing in. Breathing out. Know that you're breathing out. Seeing how phenomena arises, stays for a time, passes away. again and again, recognizing when the attention may wander off. Carried away by a thought or a story. And then with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. Relaxing into the next breath. Observing whatever's happening. Thought, sound, sensation in the body. Even the perception of what's happening. The assignment. The mind's seeming need to label every experience. Can we simply allow the arising and passing away of thoughts and sounds and sensations without even feelings or moods? Without assigning some meaning to them. The bare awareness of experience unfolding moment to moment, breath by breath. Just that. Seeing the impermanent nature of things, the rapid arising and passing away. Even my voice. Thoughts, sounds, sensations, memories. Everything in flux. end with a poem. Allow. There is no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt, containing a tornado. Dam a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist, and the tide will sweep you off your feet. Allow, and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in. The wild and the weak, fear, fantasies, failures, and success. When loss rips off the doors of the heart, or sadness veils your vision with despair, practice becomes simply bearing the truth in the choice to let go of your known way of being. The world is revealed to your new eyes. Allow. Feel free to stretch or move around. So I'm going to give a kind of a bit of a formal talk to perhaps unpack a little of what the experiential practice was aimed towards. The title of this talk is Impermanence of Perception. So the Buddha spoke often of the importance of impermanence, or what he called anicca. In just about every teaching, this was it's a very big theme found in Buddhism. It's one of three main characteristics that were some of the first insights that the Buddha had. The first, which really led to his exploration, is that of suffering. And then the Buddha to be, for people who may not know, the Buddha to be, embarked on an 8-year journey of self-exploration. Extreme yoga, fasting, deep concentration practices, and ultimately kind of searching for what he called anicca, which means freedom from suffering, basically. The word nibbana, searching for nibbana, which is similar to nirvana, right? It's the same idea, just different translation. Freedom from suffering. It actually means the extinguishing of the flame. So one of the ways in which the Buddha described suffering is as if we are on fire. When we are engulfed in the flames of suffering. And that's the practice, this meditative practice, this kind of wisdom and compassion practice is aimed at extinguishing the flame. In other words, no longer kind of giving fuel to the flame, to the fire that's burning us. And so suffering, and then the second, major insight that the Buddha to be, a guy named Sid or Siddhartha had, was impermanence. To see, just as I was kind of instructing you over this, last 30 minutes or so, to begin to kind of explore the impermanent nature of all things. And sometimes we can, I kind of get that, like the sun rises and sets and the moon, and the earth is spinning, but we don't really feel the earth spinning. But we kind of know conceptually, okay, we're on a, spinning rock suspended in the middle of nothing. And there's this there's basically a bomb in the center that could really go at any moment. It's ever changing. Weather is ever changing. The breath is ever changing. Thoughts are ever changing. Our life, we're ever growing from the moment we're born, really from the moment we're conceived. We're growing, ever changing, sometimes evolving, sometimes devolving, right? Until the light is extinguished, meaning we die. This body dies. So the impermanent nature of things, or anicca, is that this is constantly happening all the time, and we generally don't fucking notice. And so the meditation tonight was a little bit geared towards, can we begin to kind of see the ever-changing? And of course, we all have had glimpses of that. Like I was saying, sunrises and people dying, even the fluctuation throughout the day. Like, how many feelings have you had today? How many thoughts have you had today? So it's kind of a big deal. The third characteristic of the Buddha's insights prior to his full awakening is what's called anatta. Anatta means kind of no fixed and permanent self. So this is another pretty big concept found within Buddhism. So I'm not going to get into kind of the suffering and the not self so much. I'm going to focus in on impermanence because it's central. And here's the Buddha's words on impermanence. Bhikkhus, this is a word meaning monks or meditators, practitioners. When the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it eliminates all sensual craving, all craving for existence. It eliminates all ignorance. It uproots all conceit, I am. When the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated. So he's saying complete liberation of heart and mind is possible when the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated. So this is like of particular interest, this kind of perception of impermanence. accurate perception is the nature of insight. Really, one could say all of what we call insight or wisdom is just a perception shift from seeing things in the small self, me, mine, everything is happening to me. That's what's conceit, to the kind of broader sense of self. And that's where this kind of, the expansiveness of our own minds, the, seeing the wisdom of impermanence can take place, thus letting go of suffering. So perception is one of what's called the 5 aggregates that comprise human beings from the Buddhist kind of perception, or the Buddhist kind of teaching perspective. And so what are the 5 aggregates? Material form, all material form. A rock, you, a car, the ocean, the earth, the chair. It's all material form. One aspect. Second aspect, feeling tone. Feeling tone is this kind of, I've been talking about it kind of a lot lately, this kind of reverberation of experience and the knowing of experience. Would you do me a favor and crack that window? So, it might be getting a little stuffy in here. Might get a little louder, but yeah, it's either up or down and pull. Thank you, sir. So feeling tone, so material form, feeling tone, and then perception. So to experience and to know experience. And then where perception comes in is the knowing of experience and then labeling it. And so one of the, maybe you guys got there, maybe you didn't, and it's okay if you didn't, and it's great if you did. But the idea of can you experience a sound without labeling it as what the sound was to you? That's kind of what is one of the kind of aims of this idea of seeing the impermanent nature and then trying to suspend or shift perception. Now, this happens because we all have experiences. But when we over-identify with our perception of things, then we get locked into some beliefs. And some of these beliefs we've carried with us since we were children. Because, your parents, every teacher, every adult in your life when you were a child was like, rock, rock. And then you would say, rock, rock, right? And then that's a rock. Or, bottle, or bicycle, or, every single thing. And this is, useful, right? We kind of have to know how to navigate our life, our surroundings. But there's also a way in which we overemphasize, and then we lose sense of that kind of broader experience. So we start to kind of identify or over-identify with our perceptions. So then mental formations come into play. What's a mental formation? It's a thought about whatever that thing is based on past experience. Right? So this is something we notice when we're in meditation and I'm directing you in some way, breath, body, here, now, sound, every, present time experience, and then the mind wanders off. Does anyone not have the mind wander off? Yeah, I've been doing this 25 years, and my mind fucking wanders. And some days it's crazy out of control. And other days, they're just little blips. But it's always kind of moving because that's the nature of the mind. And so one of the things that we can begin to do is just see them as mental formations and not me. Mental formations, mental fabrications, as one teacher likes to call them. Fabricated by all of these other things that are happening. So then there's consciousness. Right? Consciousness, is said, this is like a combination of all what makes us human, all these different parts. Consciousness, kind of another talk. So perception is to see or recognize, seeing something and labeling it based on the past experience. Light, movement, color, sound. And then we impute a perception. So material form, right? Material form. Material form. Material form. The knowing, the labeling, the feeling tone, consciousness, all happening in that movement. So this is an example of just how it happens all the time. So fast, faster than the speed of light. One teacher, Ajahn Sumedho, gave a definition of consciousness that I really like. See, he said, the consciousness is the reality of here and now. And so we have ear consciousness and eye consciousness and body consciousness. And it's constantly changing and arising and changing, rising and changing. It's not consistent over time. And that's kind of what we're doing in meditation. When sound becomes predominant, it's sound consciousness or hearing consciousness that becomes predominant. And then when we see something or we have some vision or there's a thought that's strong or an emotion that's strong, emotion consciousness, thought consciousness. We smell something, nose consciousness. This is happening all the time. All right. So perception is key to the first of the Eightfold Path, which is right view, seeing things as they really are. So without this ability to kind of, recognize, then we actually can't have that perception shift. So seeing accurately or perceiving accurately, this is something that the Buddha talked about, that is, again, how we kind of get stuck in suffering by not perceiving accurately. You ever done that? You ever went to see a movie with someone and then had a debate afterwards about what the movie was about? And you had two different perceptions. Oh, well, I thought it was, the main character was this way. And we can have different perceptions of things. And somewhere in between is maybe the reality, or what the director had intended or whatever. So seeing the constantly changing nature of things. Of course, we're not always seeing this. So the Buddha was a realist, and he encouraged people to see things as they really are and not be swept away in the fantasy of the mind. But so often we get swept away in the fantasy of the mind. And we can't help it. It's habitual. It's learned. It's encouraged. So insight is a perception shift. The nature of things don't change, just our understanding does. It's important to recognize that. So this is the key in the understanding of much of the Buddha's teachings, and why I say often more will be revealed. And part of the challenge in this practice can be, can we collect the attention, calm the mind and body enough to just begin to see what really is, what's really happening. And it's kind of like dropping down. Matter of fact, so I often use scuba diving as an example, because I love to scuba dive. There's been times where I've been out and I'm getting on the boat, or I'm on the boat and I'm getting my tank together, I'm getting my suit on, I'm getting my weights, and cleaning my goggles, all this kind of preparation and busyness, right? And then there's a little bit of it. There's the anxiety of getting in the water, and especially if it's choppy, right? There's wind, there's there's movement, getting in the water, and then once in the water, it's like hopefully everything works right, and then you start to submerge, and as you start to submerge, there's a quieting that takes place, and the water becomes calm, and then there's a kind of a seeing. Hopefully this is like a promotion to go scuba diving. There's a seeing of things more clearly. And then once you're down there for a while, the ocean becomes curious of you. And big fish, little fish, fucking octopus, like eels, like shit will come and just kind of check you out, because you're kind of getting in this symbiosis with the ocean. I love it when that can happen. So this kind of more will be revealed. There's lots of different ways that people kind of look at perception, and there's some of those things now where, have you ever seen, they have like little apps and stuff now where you look at something and it's like a ballerina spinning in one direction, but then if you look at it long enough, it will change directions, and nothing's actually changing. It's just our perception. Or there's like this kind of famous one where it's like a one picture and you look at it and it looks like kind of like an old lady, but then if you continue to look at it, it's actually a young woman, a young like debutante or whatever. It's like this kind of, what changed? There's even people that are getting tattoos now that like say one thing, but then if you look a little closer, it says another thing, like life and death, using the same letters. It's trippy how that happens. One of my friends is pretty into that, right? He's got a couple of those. So the Buddha, spoke of uninstructed people, okay? He called them uninstructed worldlings, meaning people that hadn't come to this kind of wise view, or hadn't begun to kind of see things clearer. They were still in the kind of, they're still stuck to their phones, they're still in the app, they haven't put the phone down to experience what was actually going on around them. And this has been happening long before there was a phone created, a smartphone. The phone is smart, but what does it do to us? Do you remember phone numbers anymore? Right? We trust this device. I still remember my childhood number. That's the last one. My sister's phone number. I remember my sister's phone number because she has a rotary phone. Anyway, the Buddha spoke of the uninstructed uninstructed people as having inverted perception, which means, assuming permanence and seeing the body as self, things as solid or steady. This kind of, in 2 years, I will be A, B, or C. But in this practice, the teaching is that life is uncertain. And it takes a perception shift for us to begin to kind of break apart the concept of our personality being permanent. It is the perception that liberates us from clinging, wanting to see kind of a certain state or mind or way of life. This isn't intellectual, we can hear a talk about it, but living it is what is necessary. That's why I was kind of pointing in the practice today about, kind of just beginning. And it's, even doing something like going and just sitting at the beach and closing your eyes and just experiencing the rapid changing of experience. It doesn't matter whether it's hot or whether it's cold, or whether it's just right. There's going to always be something changing. The ocean is a great example of that too. So these small shifts during practice, like weather changes in our minds. So it's part of our inverted perception, right? Clinging is a way for us to try to find some sense of stability. This deep yearning for kind of happiness, and clinging is kind of the strategy that gives us that sense. But it keeps us in a dis-ease, and some would say in a delusion. Right? The mind likes stability; it doesn't like change. You heard that before? People say this to me all the time. I'm not comfortable with change. I don't like change. I want things to be stable. Do you really? No, you fucking don't. You're lying to yourself. I want to have the same amount of money that I have right now all the time for the rest of my life. I want to live in the same place. I want to feel the way I feel right now all the time. Perverted perception, right? Inverted understanding of the impermanent. Clinging to only if it's good. But can you imagine, think of your best, the best moment, who knows, right after the best orgasm you've ever had, the best surf session you've ever had, the best meal you've ever eaten, the best whatever that you've had. And then just being there all the time for the rest of your life. Probably be cool for, a day. I can just imagine joy, being just exhilarated in joy would be amazing for 25 minutes. And then it would start to feel painful, perhaps, or annoying. Right? It's an illusion. And we chase it. And it's bullshit mostly. This is the ever-changing, this is flux. Now we can have equanimity, mental and emotional balance, with the reality that things change. So we don't have to get super flustered every time, you know. So this is kind of holding on to an experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, versus kind of letting go. Clinging is the fear of instability. Here's a teaching from the Buddha that I really like. The search for a solid resting place is burning. Not to need one is cooling and peaceful. The search for a solid resting place is burning. In other words, causing mental anguish. Not to need one is cooling and peaceful. I really like that. I wrote it down. I liked it so much. We cling for security as if clinging can save us from pain. But it can't. I want, then I need, therefore I am. We become so identified. We even become identified with the clinging. This is what we call addiction. I'm an addict. I'm a clinger. I'm a 100% clinger. So why don't we perceive impermanence? A shift in the self is grief. There's a grief to it when we start to. Oftentimes, people talk about when they meditate, and then they start to have a non-self experience, or they start to kind of broaden out of the small self. They get scared. It's frightening. Too expansive. That's true, but that's just a perception. That's not a reality. But it scares us. So if we open to what is true and don't cling to it, we will have more insights and less suffering. Just to kind of bring this into view, and I got some time, but I'll pause here and open up for some thoughts or questions. But there's this story at the Buddha's death. So the Buddha, basically, there's different ideas of what happened, but he basically had food poisoning at about 80. And he just kind of resigned. I'm done. Done my work. I'm just going to let this run its course. This also was 2,500 years ago, right? Where dysentery was a death sentence. I mean, they were, drinking yak urine, right, as a cure for things. But anyway, his attendant, his cousin, Ananda. So Ananda, at the kind of recognition of, the Buddha being like, all right, this is my final journey. It's happening. I'm dying. And I'm at peace with that. He felt like he had done his work. He kind of taught and traveled for 45 years, teaching anyone who would listen, taking, he was 80 years old. 80 years old, 2,500 years ago. It's a long life. It's still a long life today. So Ananda, who was his cousin and a little younger, and Ananda was the story of Ananda is Ananda was his attendant and his cousin, and so traveled with the Buddha the whole time, and never, all these people were getting enlightened and becoming meditation masters around Ananda or around the Buddha, And Ananda just never quite got there, you know. So he was resigned to, be the faithful, attendant, devotion to practice without the goal of enlightenment, kind of like what people call a bodhisattva. So at this time, so Ananda was very attached to the Buddha, and like right before his death, Ananda was found crying, like off in a corner somewhere, crying, grieving the loss of the Buddha. And the Buddha, kind of hearing this, on his deathbed, was like, this fucking guy Ananda, does he not get it? Not that there's anything wrong with grief. And that's actually, so he called Ananda in. And he kind of scolded him a little bit. He said, haven't I told you many times? Nothing lasts. Everything changes and vanishes. But it's just human nature. When we're confronted with loss and change, we feel grief. We feel sorrow. Clinging to grief or sorrow hardens our hearts. And this is one of the things I kind of see. And when I say grief, I mean, there's all kinds of grief. It's not just the loss of a loved one. There's grief of who we used to be. Ever experienced that? Grief of what we've lost. Grief of what we never had that we always wanted. This is, what's talked about as suffering, mental anguish. So this is a wake-up call. So question, kind of, what am I resisting? What am I resisting in my own life? What am I not turning to? Sadness arises, passes away. When we don't see impermanence, we assume permanence in the future. I'm not sure how much more I'll be able to get to, but I'll open up in a minute. I just want to read this last piece about the Dalai Lama. So this is a quote from the Dalai Lama, that we don't actually notice the momentariness of change. There is absolutely no stasis. Nothing is not changing. Life happens every moment. Begin to pay attention to the ending of things. Notice the mind's attention fade. So this isn't something that I did in this practice today, but it's a good practice to notice the ending of things. Like, how often did you notice the beginning of a breath, but not the ending of a breath? Or the beginning of a thought, but not the ending of a thought. So noticing the full arising and passing away, as I was kind of pointing to. Okay, so I'll kind of stop there for now and see if there's any kind of thoughts, questions, reflections. Let's go with kind of questions first. People that maybe didn't understand, or there was something they would like a little bit more clarity on. So in the room. Good, so it's clear. Okay. Again, it's one of those things, it's actually very simple. Impermanence is just the reality of things. And when we cling, we suffer. And when we can let go and just allow the reality of things to move through our ever-changing experience, we suffer less. So simple and so fucking hard to do. You know, because we're clingers. All right. Thoughts, questions, reflections? Yeah.
I'll just say that I think the famous philosopher Semisonic said it best when they said, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end.
Yeah, that's right. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Yeah. Yeah. Who said that?
Semisonic.
Semisonic.
It's like a band from the 90s.
Oh, okay. Nice. I like band philosophy.
Yeah. Me too.
Please.
Thought I guess I'd share with everyone. I've had a friend since the past 20 years, and good friend, very call each other brother, all that
Mhm.
good stuff. And it's always been touch and go over the years, and we're in contact again. And just on Friday, we were going for a walk, and he said something. I was like, oh, I get it. Like, you're totally full of shit. I get it. It took me 20 years to get that, and it's kind of bittersweet. There's like a huge relief in it, but also like I feel kind of bad, just like growing,
Mhm.
and it's not a spiteful kind of like you're full of shit. It's like I feel like a little perturbed and like, well, people are precious resources. So you don't just like cut people. I don't believe in the whole like cut negative people. I think it's kind of an easy out. Like,
Mm.
I think extending compassion requires a little bit more, and focus and energy and commitment. But also like I also want to like move forward. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's that tricky balance of like extending the hand, like and also giving them the dignity of making his own mistakes and not taking it. And I'm just sharing. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's a weird feeling of guilt and relief,
Mm.
and it's fun. It's also kind of fun.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah, and even like here's an example. Okay, so I used to drink, and I had some friends that I partied with, and grew up with, and then I stopped drinking, and then 20 years later, I ran into this guy, and his perception of me was based on 20 years ago. I had actually seen him, you know, but not really, and he was drunk, and he could not connect that I had changed over that 20-year process. And I don't even think that he connected that he changed. It was like he was still like the cool rocker from the 80s guy, you know what I mean? Or whatever, the early 90s, And and I saw a very different person who looked like they were suffering a lot. But it was just a really interesting kind of the way that we can get kind of locked in certain perceptions of our family or our friends, I love it, and even ourselves. Oh, I am this way. You know, so perception is really useful when we can begin to kind of broaden our view of perception, not be so fixed. I have caught myself saying, "This is just the way that I am," several times. I used to do it all the time. It was an excuse for my behavior. This is just the way that I am. I'm just an asshole. You have to just deal with it. As if we're not changing. Of course, the antidote to this is not only is it seeing the impermanence and having that perception shift, but also compassion. Compassion for the parts of us that get locked into a survival strategy, the parts of us that, didn't know any better. And even like the compassion for your friend and the fact that, he's full of shit. I had this person was actually a teacher. They weren't my teacher, but they were like a colleague, and they could never be serious. They were always joking, always punning, always kind of shifting there. They could never just have a straight conversation with someone. And I called him on it. He wasn't funny anymore. He got really defensive and angry. And this is just my way of like coping in the world. I was like, yeah, but what are you avoiding? What are you resisting in this kind of constant jovial shift? I mean, it's not the worst strategy. I mean, there's the other strategy, which is constantly angry, right? I was more that, Of course, not constantly angry, but that was the perception that I held on to, and other people affirmed. And they're both protections. What are we protecting? I think of that often sometimes when I notice myself getting defensive or reactive. I'm like, oh wait, I'm being defensive. What am I defending? My need to be right? My false sense of self? My perception? My opinion? My blank? Of course, my girlfriend's in the room, and I'm sure that she would, disagree with me. I do this all the time. What are you talking about? I'm a work in progress. Aren't we all? Any last kind of thoughts? Maybe someone who hasn't shared either online or in person? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. This kind of really hit home today. I was facilitating a group today, and it was all about stages of change, and what are people, what they're attached to and unwilling to let go of, even to not want. I mean, in fear of change, in fear of that change. What's holding you where you're at, and why are you clinging to that when it's not serving any purpose for you at all, in a positive way. And just seeing the different the way people look at things. We were talking about broadening our outlook and stuff like that. I think a lot of the people I'm dealing with, and I know at one time I was in fear of change. I was comfortable in that spot, and I was not sure that I could go past that spot, so I was holding myself back because of that. So I was actually clinging to something that wasn't working, and even those things that I was clinging to, like you said, were impermanent. So when they weren't there, all of a sudden it's like the bottom fell out from underneath me, and then I was lost one more time without any, what am I going to do now? And so I don't know. It was just a real good talk for me. It just hit home real good today because it was something that I was teaching about today. So I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah, we often teach what we need to learn, you know. You made me think of a model. I think I've said it before. And this is about kind of clinging, right? Familiar, predictable, safe, and painful. You know, we cling to what is familiar and predictable and feels safe, even if it's painful, even if it's hurting us. This is what we do with our addiction. This is what we do with, you know, relationships. This is what we do with our own kind of self-view. Because what is unfamiliar, this is the kind of the instability thing. What is unfamiliar, what feels uncomfortable, what's unpredictable can be scary, but also can be liberating. And that's kind of what you're talking about, like the work that you were doing there. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so we're just about out of time, but I want to thank you for your time and attention. And those of you who attended live, great. And those of you online, thank you. I mentioned in the beginning of the, oh, thanks. Mike put it up. There's a link tree for the No BS Buddhist, which is my kind of tag. Also, you know, we're going to be putting these things on YouTube, and there's a little bit of a slow process. I finally got someone that can help me edit them, so that's going to be happening. But they are in the No BS Buddhist. And on May 1st, I'll be doing a day long here. So you're welcome to come and attend. And you can register through rebeldharma.com. So rebeldharma.com is you can find out more about it. But we're going to have it's from 10 to 4 here in this room. Be a way to really kind of delve into some practice. And we're going to do also some kind of community building and relational work as well. You can support the center. For those of you in the room, there's a bowl, and then on that bowl, actually, there's a little Venmo kind of QR code, so you can zap that, or you can hit the link if that says against the stream donations. This center is run on the donations of those who attend. Of course, there is a $15 suggested donation. And there's several things happening, you know, day longs, and there's some retreats coming up. There's one in Joshua Tree at the end of May, and there's some other, you know, retreats and whatnot. So, you know, check it out. And then if you want to support me, you can do so. My name is Jason Murphy through Venmo or PayPal. Otherwise, I think it's at No BS Buddhist. Also on Venmo is a way you can do that. Thank you for your time and attention. And let's just dedicate the merit, meaning gathering all the goodness of our practice and first taking that in, recognizing that this can be hard work to train the mind, to go against the stream of greed, hatred, and delusion. And so to acknowledge our progress and our process and our intention to free ourselves from suffering. And then sharing all this goodness out in all directions. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering.